Huh. Brandon, you can see it. There's two Excel files.
Well, I guess, if we mute our microphone, I think it defaults to your screen. So,
Okay. I don't know what else to do on my end. I'm sharing, and it shows I'm sharing on my end. Samira, can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. I can't really read it, but I can see. I mean, as you point. I mean.
All right. Well, I can zoom in a
Oh,
little
there
bit.
it is. Yes, that's better.
Ah, okay.
Yes, I was able to see it when I clicked on it and clicked on you on the bottom right-hand corner.
All right. I'm going to give you a clue here, and then I think y'all can work it from there. Can y'all see this now? Brandon, can you see it?
yes.
Okay. This is just a piece of the worksheet, and I think it'll tell you what you need to do. The problem gave you the demand, and someone asked the question. I forget who it was, so I clarified that's total demand. That's what I meant it to be, and the company, Charlie Company, gets a share of that. And so if you take their share of the total demand, that's how many units that they sold, and then based on their price, they get a revenue. And then from the revenue, they subtract their costs, and they've got four types of costs there. And once you subtract all four of those costs, you get a profit or a loss. That's really all the spreadsheet is. And then you just replicate that over 5 years using those growth factors that I gave you. And that's really how it goes together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What I'm saying, for example, that the first year their share was 20%, and then I think there's I don't know where I can find the actual wording of the problem, but there's a growth rate that we predict. That's where we get the simulation. We estimate that the growth is going to be between two numbers over each of those subsequent 4 years. And so you just say, well, what's my share going to be in year two? Well, that's share in year one plus the growth, right? Now how you
Are you using, okay, so you got total demand, you got 5, 15, and 20%, a range. So are you using a RAND function for Excel, or are you doing everything in the CB?
Well, what you do, you go ahead and build your model in Excel, just the way you normally would in Excel. So, well, shucks. I'll give you this much so you can see there. I'm giving you this problem, so you get a little something for attending. The demand had a growth factor, and you put that percent growth in this cell, and then you go to Crystal Ball, and you define that assumption with whatever that distribution is. And then that demand up here, you can see that, it's just equal to the original year's demand. And there's a number of ways you can calculate that. I like to use 1 plus the percent. So that'll be the second year is 115% of the first year. And you just propagate that on through year 3, 4, and 5. And then you do the same thing for the share. The share has a growth that we simulate. It's got a distribution. I don't remember if the distribution is triangular or uniform or normal.
Okay.
But whatever that distribution is, you set this up as to be modeled, to be simulated. And then again, that percent share is just the first year plus, in the way I do it, 1 plus the percent. And you just go across that way. And if it's a decrease, then it's 1 minus the percent. That's about as simple as I can make it. And what I like to do, I like to break everything out separately before I start summing up. That's the best way of doing it. I've done this so many times that at the bottom I will go ahead and just use one formula to add everything up. But you can break that into pieces. You could just total up your revenue, total up your cost, and then subtract the cost from the revenue, one number to get the profit. Might be a safer way to build it if you don't, if you haven't built many of these models. But anyway, you just define these things as a variable, and then you define the bottom number here, the profit, as a forecast. That's what you want to see, you're studying. And you do that for your whole model. And then once you get it built together, you just click on run. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess what I was, I can't seem to get my brain out of the long-handed Excel formulas. So I was trying to figure out, using the CB to try and change those variables. To me, that I was imagining that I had to figure that out first and then put it into CB. So, I don't know. These additional programs, they're all, now I figured out problem one with Crystal Ball. At least I think. I have no idea. I'm pretty sure I did it right. But yeah, coming up with that, it's a pretty unique program.
Well, it just can do this so quickly. I've built this thing manually using the Excel functions for random, and then I created a triangular distribution and made a macro, which is not that hard to do. So so I could build these kinds of things without using Crystal Ball, except it takes a lot longer to do it manually. And my simple version doesn't have the fancy reports that Crystal Ball gives you. I can produce a curve, and I can produce all the data manually, but Crystal Ball makes it so much easier to do all this if you're going to do this thing over and over again. And I guess our intent with this course is to introduce you, to let you know these kind of tools are out there. So if your company, most individuals can't afford to spend about $1,000 for Crystal Ball, but a lot of companies can if they do this a lot. But just so when you get out in the business world, I don't have to build everything from scratch in Excel. Decision Tree is out there, Ph.D is out there, Crystal Ball is out there. All these add-ins are out there. Some are free, some a few $100. But if you do this a lot, or you have a lot of people doing it, it makes sense for the company to buy that add-in. And that's really the sense. But you can do this. I've done this problem step by step just using Excel functions. You can do it. It's just a lot of work.
Right. I think that was my problem, trying to disconnect and figure out where Excel stops and Crystal Ball takes over. For me, it's been very confusing and taxing on the brain in the little time that I actually do have to do any kind of homework.
Well, I can understand that, and I hear you. I know what it's like to work a full-time job and do this. If you look at let me look at this other example that comes with Crystal Ball. This is a simple, model. There again, it's just the rental times the rent times the monthly expenses, and they call them assumptions. I call them variables. And you can see there, the first one is a uniform distribution with a min and a max. And this one is a normal distribution with a mean and standard deviation. And of course, that's the forecast. And all you need to do is just click Start. Let me run it again. And of course, this one populates 16 zillion graphs out there. Whoops. That's running mine. I'm sorry. It just ran mine. You didn't see all these. I'll be doggone. I forgot it. It runs, when I've got two instances of Excel Crystal Ball out there, and Crystal Ball doesn't know that. So when you click Run, it runs every active window. That's why we got all those other charts popping up there. But I think this is the one for this little simple model. and it gives you a histogram. It ran 1,000 trials. You can set the number of trials right there. And this is the histogram of, which is a normal distribution. Since the major expense item was normally distributed, then it would make sense that the output is going to pretty well parallel that variable. And it shows it goes from losing $2,000 to earning about $7,500. And you can look at statistics, which shows you how many trials, and it shows the mean out of all those trials, medium and mode. You don't need all those things, but it gives you a lot of information there. And with the standard error down here, if you remember standard errors, with the standard error you can calculate a confidence interval. If your boss wants to know what is the confidence interval around this mean, you just take the standard error and multiply it times the critical value of t or z. This would be z, and for alpha over 2, and that would give you the confidence interval around that. Let me go back here to this chart. And to answer some of these questions, the way I like to remember it, if I'm asking a left tail question, I put whatever value I'm interested in the left tail. And if you remember the chart I posted earlier in the course, less than or equal or less than points to the left, so that would be a 0. If we were interested, what's the probability I would make 0 money? Just put 0 in there and click enter. And it shows there's a 91% chance I'm going to break even on this model. And you can also just drag these pointers. So I could drag it to 0 and get about the same thing. If I want to know what's the likelihood that I'll make more than 4,000, you got it. Then just click enter. It shows that I did it backwards again. But anyway, it shows you that there's a 78% chance you'll make less than 4,000. So that would be a 22% chance you'll make more than 4,000. And it gives you a graphic there. And you can just use these pointers. Drag it there, and there's about a 51% chance it'll be between $1,100 and $4,000. So you can answer a lot of those questions just by either keying into these areas or dragging the pointers to, in other words, and you can drag a lot of different ways there, but let me try an 80%. There's roughly 80%. So there'd be an 80% chance it'd be between $300 and $5,000. I'm dragging it back and forth. If you're asked, what's the chance it'll be between 500 and 6,000? Key it in that way and you'll get the exact answer. There's a 81% chance it'll be between that range. Remember those old normal distribution problems, when we're doing hypothesis tests? That's really all this is doing for you. But it gives you a quick way to answer these questions. The other thing you can, let's see if I can find it on here. Is it up there? I clicked out of crystal ball. Wait a minute. Where are the views? I don't use crystal ball. There it is. Is that going to work? Well, I'm clicking the wrong buttons here. I don't do this enough. There's a way you can create a sensitivity chart, and for some reason it's not coming up. This is a lot like SPSS. I'm trying to remember. There it is. It's on my other screen.
I don't know what SPSS is.
SPSS is a statistical software that is used by a lot of people. I used it in my doctoral program. IBM bought them about 3 years ago, and they've really started adding on a lot of tools. When I used SPS, it didn't have these Monte Carlo simulations built in, but now you can do all this stuff in SPSS, and it's actually cheaper by a long shot than buying Crystal Ball. you can buy an annual subscription to SPS for about $80 versus I think this is
I have
$9.
a question.
Pardon?
I'm sorry, I have a question. My kids were screaming and I was yelling at them.
Okay.
Are we supposed to do this for the homework? This part right here?
No, well, what you would do is, once you build your model, you run it, and you will get for both the problem 1 and problem 2. You run it, and you will get a histogram like this one. You run it again, and of course, see, it's running all these histograms for the second model. Remember, in the second model, you've got, you'll have each of the 5 years. And here you can see the histogram for year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. And there's the histogram for the cumulative. And I think there's a question about what happens in year 2. And then there's a question about, how much money do we make in the cumulative. And so you would use that particular histogram to, answer the questions. So you get a little sneak.
So is that those assumptions or variables are created per year?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how you come up with the multiple histograms, or instead of going like straight across, you created an individual assumptions for each of those with the same characteristics or plus or minus values, correct?
Exactly.